All right, so I'm going to walk through assignment number 2 with you now. Hopefully you found the last video useful to you and give me feedback on how this is coming along so that I know what you need in these videos. Assignment 2 was very similar to assignment 1, except this time I'm giving you a research question specifically to answer that involves 2 variables. So the first one was more intended to focus on 1 variable. This one I give you 2 specific things to look for, or really a comparison between the custom design and the non-custom roller coasters. Let me pull up the specifics here. So the question says, do custom-made roller coasters, the variable custom design, tend to cause higher nausea, the variable nausea, which there's actually 2 variables for nausea. One of them is nausea rating. Okay, so let's go to SPSS. So open this up here. You'll see the 2 variables for nausea, and nausea rating. Nausea rating is nominal. Well, actually, we could probably call it ordinal if we wanted to. But they've taken the nausea variable and split it up into I think 5 groups, going from very low to very high. So let's get some data here. So if we're wanting to know nausea and if there are differences based on the type of design, whether it was custom or sort of stock, we can go to descriptive statistics, explore, put custom design in the factor list. This allows for the descriptive statistics to be broken out by the group levels of the variable you put in here as the factor. So those need to be nominal or ordinal data types in the factor list to do that. Otherwise, if it's a scale, then it's considered to be continuous, so there's not any clear way to separate things into groups. And then nausea as the dependent variable. And then under plots, we want to look at a histogram. We can go ahead and check normality plots. I'll go through that again. I want to make sure that you're getting that later on. This will become more of an important thing for us right now. It's not really that big of a deal. It's not necessary. And make sure both statistics and plots are going to be displayed. When you click OK, it shows you all of the plots here. And I'm going to open this in an HTML document, which I'm going to show you how to do that because I think you might find it more useful to see it this way. So if you click on File and Export as Web Report, then of course save it wherever you want, rename it. And then when you open it, it just will open in any browser that you have. So it's much easier to open it across different devices if you have access to the HTML file, which will have an extension of .htm. Okay, so we'll see that there are 43 roller coasters in the video game default group and 99 in the custom group. Nothing missing. Everything has a label of custom or not custom. Let's look at the descriptives here. So the first set of descriptives is for not custom. And these descriptives show us that the mean is 4.9 for nausea. And you can see the nausea word over here on the left side. So the mean amount of nausea is close to 5. The median is around 4.7. So if we round up here, 4.9 and 4.7. Those don't seem like big differences, but we don't know that yet, how big of a difference there is until we see some understanding of spread. The standard deviation is 1.56. That's pretty small. And if we look at the total range here, we go from a minimum of 2.14 to a maximum of 9.85, which makes the range 7.71. So when you're looking at it that way, this difference between, or the 4.68 and 4.86, so 4.9 and 4.7, within a range of 7.7, it seems like that is a pretty small distance, especially when we consider the standard deviation is 1.56. That seems small. It's way less than one standard deviation. And if we look at the interquartile range, the distance of the middle 50% is 1.5, which actually is very close to the standard deviation, but standard deviation, you have to consider going both directions, so it's going to be about a distance of 3 for the middle 2/3 of the data if this is a symmetric distribution. So you'll be able to tell this when you look at the histogram, but just for now, it helps you get sort of a prediction in your head. The skewness and kurtosis values are well within the rules of thumb of between plus and minus 2. So we're expecting that probably this group, at least for nausea, is pretty normally distributed, or pretty symmetric at least. 4.1 for the mean for the custom, and a median of 4.02. Those are also very close to one another. Standard deviation is smaller than it was, 1.27 or 28 if we round. A min of 1.3, max of about 7, with a range of 5.69. So the range is smaller, which doesn't necessarily mean the standard deviation is smaller. Interquartile range 1.91, which is actually a bit bigger than the interquartile range was for the non-custom group, the stock roller coasters. Skewness and kurtosis are also well within acceptable ranges. And if we're thinking about a comparison right now, it's looking like the custom coasters actually have less nausea ratings than the ones that came stock. And if we go back to the case processing summary here, let's see. Yeah, so there are way more custom created coasters. More than twice as many, which gives the custom created coasters actually more opportunity to have more spread, but it will wash out that spread if there's a lot of data centralized in one place. So extreme values won't have as much of an impact on that. So it looks like actually the opposite is true from the question, saying does it cause more nausea? It seems like the answer so far is no. Not only do the custom created coasters look like they result in less nauseous rides, they also have less variability across coasters in terms of their nausea levels. So let's look at some of the other outputs here. Test of normality. Remember that the tests of normality are designed to tell you the null hypothesis is saying these are normally distributed. So if you have a significance value, which is a p-value that's really, really small, then that is evidence that it is not very likely that you would get a sample like this. So it looks like probably these are not, both of these are really small. Now the custom group is right on the threshold of 0.05 that's used a lot. And I'll talk more about p-values later, but for these kinds of tests, I don't mind using 0.05 as much, but there's at least some reason to be cautious there. And here with the video game version that came stock, we're thinking these are definitely not, it looks like they're definitely not normally distributed. So let's look at some histograms and visually inspect them. Histogram here, we can see this range all the way up to almost 10. We know it wasn't all the way up to 10. 9.85 is the biggest one. These are the stock values. And then the lowest value is about 2.5. Mean at 4.86. We know that the median was around 4.6, I think, and so kind of see that here is being pulled up by this value on the far right. And even if you ignore this far right bar, this one roller coaster with a value of 9.85, it still looks a little bit skewed to the right because the tail is on the right side. And another way that you can tell it's skewed right is that the mean is bigger than the median because the mean gets pulled in the direction of the tail. So it does have some right skewness to it. Visually, you can see it. And if, like I said, even if we ignore this one bar on the far right, it still looks a little bit skewed to the right, but definitely more symmetric if that's the case. We might call it roughly symmetric if we throw out that one roller coaster. The histogram for the custom value or roller coasters, it looks much more symmetric. The mean is 4.1. I don't remember the median. Let's go back. The median is 4.02. Yeah, that's really, really similar. Very small difference between the mean and the median here. It's actually difficult to tell here that it might be, if it is skewed at all, it's a little bit skewed to the right because the mean is a little bigger than the median. But looking at this picture, I would say it's roughly symmetric. And it actually looks more normally distributed, but it might have some more peakedness than it should, which we can get a better idea of normality from the QQ plot. So this is for the non-custom group, which we said was skewed right. So if we look at the QQ plot for that, you can see this value over here at 9.85. And it's telling you the expected normal is 2.0004. It should be up here on this line, and it's not. So you can see that there are some issues, and even in the middle, there seems to be some problems. If we go back to the histogram, let's see if we can see that. Those are values around 5. Let's see. That's this bar here. Yeah, so if this was more symmetric, this bar would be taller. And here, that's telling us that it's the values there should be a distribution that brings that back down to this bar here. So they were expected to be higher. They're going above the line because the expected normal was bigger than it should be. And if we look at, so that one deviates a little bit here in the middle, and then of course this one definitely drops off. If we look at the one for the custom, which we thought looked, I think looks pretty normal, you can see the dots are really close to the line. There's no big deviations or trailing off kinds of things that don't make it look like it's not modeled well by a straight line. So this makes it, gives it further evidence that it is probably normally distributed. I have said before that I don't like the detrended QQ plots, I'm going to skip over those and go straight to the box plot. So this is perhaps one of the best ways to show what we're the comparison that we're trying to make, because it's both in one plot. So to answer the question, is there let me look at the question again. Let me go back. Do custom-made roller coasters tend to cause higher nausea? Do custom-made roller coasters tend to cause higher nausea? According to this, I would say no. Custom-made roller coasters tend to be less nausea than the non-custom coasters. There's also a lot more let's see. So the median is less. So on average, custom created coasters tend to have less nausea ratings or lower nausea ratings. And then, of course, say what the median is in that case. You could also discuss the spread. So custom created coasters have a smaller amount of spread, both in terms of standard deviation and in terms of interquartile range. It's a little bit bigger, actually. Let's go back to descriptives. Interquartile range is 1.9. Interquartile range is 1.5. What about standard deviation? Actually, it does look like it might be a little different here. So the range is smaller for the custom created coasters. The standard deviation is smaller for the custom created coasters. And the interquartile range is a tad bit bigger. So a couple of ways you could describe this. One of them is to say, overall, the spread is smaller, meaning that nausea ratings are more consistent for custom created roller coasters. However, in the middle 50%, there is a slight increase in spread for the custom created coasters than the default roller coasters. The default roller coasters have a little bit smaller or a little bit more consistency within the middle 50%. You can see that visually here on the graph too. This box here for the default roller coasters will fit within inside of this box. Now you're still talking about a small amount. I mean, 1.5 to 1.9, a distance of 0.4, a difference of 0.4. It's not very big. You could also describe that within the custom created coasters, there are some outliers. So if we were going to take this a step further and use it to make a judgment for Nolan Conaway's roller coasters, he created the roller coasters that are custom. You might say Nolan Conaway appears to like less nauseous roller coasters. However, I think it's important to point out that on the video game default roller coasters, there are these 3 roller coasters that are outliers. And if you take those 3 out, the video game default not custom group of roller coasters actually ends up with less spread overall. If you look at the range, it substantially decreases the range to this basically the same maximum as the custom created coasters. The minimum is a little higher. So you still could say it has a higher, the custom created coasters, if we ignore the outliers, have higher nauseous ratings overall, yet have less, yet are more consistently higher. So, and that's if, for some reason, we want to ignore these outliers these three roller coasters that seem to have really high amounts of high nauseous ratings. So whatever roller coaster number 129, number 16, and roller coaster number 120 are, for some reason those coasters have more people saying that they're nauseous, higher levels of nauseousness, if that's a word. Yeah, so there are some different things you could describe here in terms of spread, shape, and center in order to answer that question. There's different ways to answer it, and all of them are valid as long as you justify it with evidence. And of course, we're not in the point where we're getting into statistical tests yet. I want to make sure we're feeling good about this level of thinking, because understanding this level of thinking is important before we move into a test, because this kind of thinking has to happen first to understand the test better. So that's where we're going to stop for this, and I'll see you all in Discord. Let me know how things are going and ask your questions there, and we'll see how this is coming along. And next week we'll slow down as needed. So, all right.